Welcome everyone to the Saphira Center of Shamanism, where we break down the ancient technologies of shamanism and the occult, bringing them into balance with the deep psyche. My name is Luke, experienced practitioner and mentor of the shamanic and occult sciences. It's an honor to have you back with me. Before I start this topic, if you have interest in working with me through healing or mentoring or via membership programs, check out the links in the description of this video. Check out the first link for the premium membership service if you're wanting to work more directly with me through potent initiatory rituals that take place each month, as well as multiple webinars taking you through lots of potent initiatory systems and practices. Check out the second link in the description if you are wanting something a little bit more casual that you can dip in and out of at just a small monthly subscription. You can gain access to all of my exclusive content that was previously available on my website at a much higher price. And if you are interested in working with me on the healing and mentoring level one-to-one, then hit the third link in the description of this video. So on to today's topic, very big topic, and that is healing through daemons and the Qliphoth. We're going to be delving in to the daemonic entities that dwell within the Qliphothic tree. We're going to be looking at them from an initiatory standpoint through the Qliphothic tree and from an invocation point of view. We're going to be looking at the real benefits and the true role that daemonic entities have in your healing and evolutionary path, how you can tap into their currents of energy to liberate your true self, to merge with your inner child and retrieve your power, and ultimately to retrieve your own godhood. This is going to be a very important subject for those who are wanting to understand more about how daemonic entities and the Qliphothic currents of energy work within your system when you start to interact with them from a healing and evolutionary standpoint. We are also going to be doing the regular shattering of any illusions that people have or preconceived notions about these particular spirits, about these currents of energy, exposing them as far more than just sources of black magical power, far more than just dark entities, but as deep shadow archetypes to help us to get to know ourselves better and to integrate some of the deepest, most primordial portions of ourselves. We're going to be looking at how we can use these currents of energy to connect with our primal self and merge with that true void state of consciousness that we all have within us, encased within our masks and personas. Extremely deep subject, so definitely stay tuned. So, dark matter alchemy. Dark matter alchemy, left-hand path, self-deification, Qliphothic spirits, daemonic entities. All of this is extremely cool, extremely edgy. Everybody knows that there is a lot of power to be gained from the darkness. Some people are willing to embrace it. Some people are scared of it. Some people think that they are embracing it, but actually they're not. Okay, and that is really what I want to hone in on first here. The dark matter alchemy, black magic in general, is seen as something, particularly within the left-hand path community, as something that gives you a lot of power. People can go into these practices wanting power, as much as that is valid, and that does often kickstart our initiatory process. The ego gets somewhat seduced into its own evolution. You've got to understand that that power is going to come at a significant cost. And it doesn't come at a cost that aligns to, say, what Hollywood would say. Okay, oh, you interact with daemons, you interact with Satan, you interact with these dark forces that, oh yeah, you're sacrificing your own soul. Oh, you're sacrificing the people around you. Oh, all of that rubbish. Yeah, it's not like that at all. It comes at a cost of your false self. Okay, which is basically the illusion, okay, the masks, the roles, the personas that you have chosen to emanate. Often these are roles and constructs that you have not chosen consciously, but have actually been given to you, whether it's through the trauma that you've experienced or through the collective consciousness. Okay, so what you're doing when you're interacting with dark matter is that you are actually going to go through a process, if you're interacting with these energies properly, of actually crumbling those illusionary structures on the microcosmic level. And we do this by interacting with these intelligences, these extraterrestrial intelligences that represent and mirror portions of our own unconscious mind, portions of our underworld, our personal underworld that we have neglected. Okay, so what happens when we do experience trauma is that the energy gets dissociated from, okay, the needs of the child when we go through early years trauma gets dissociated from. The child then gets encased, almost frozen within that trauma, within the nervous system, and that then projects outwards from the nervous system into the energy field and then causes potentially re-traumatizing events to flow through. What you're doing when you're interacting with dark matter energy is that you are going through a dissolving process. You are basically interacting with forces that are extremely negative in nature, which doesn't mean bad, as I've explained in previous videos, but they are feminine, vampiric, which means they take away. Yeah, they devour illusion. The food for the beings that dwell within the primordial chaos, the food for these entities is your false self, the illusions that you have cultivated. So what you're doing when you're interacting with these currents of energy, not even doing any invocations, even just by reading about them, even just by receiving this information here on this video, you are somewhat exposing yourself to the current of energy that is primal in nature. Okay, and it's important to understand that this is not anything that is outside of you. Okay, what is happening here is that I am transmitting verbal dialogue. Okay, and what that will start to do is that that will settle into your mind, into your nervous system, and that will in itself start to open up doorways to these particular spirits. Okay, some people viewing this will be like, oh, but maybe I don't want that. Yeah, you have free will, of course, but particularly when you start committing to actually learning more about these types of spirits and actually exploring what is occult, which is what is hidden, then you're going to start to open doorways within your own consciousness. Okay, you're going to start to open doorways to aspects of yourself that have been shut away for a very long time. For myself, when I started interacting with the negative polarity, I started by reading S. Connolly's Complete Book of Demonolatry. Very good book if you are wanting to explore modern demonolatry related practices, which is very good. It's humane, treats the spirits in an even way, doesn't do that lesser key of Solomon rubbish of trapping and binding spirits to get them to do what you want. It's a very sort of good, reciprocal and healthy way to approach spirits. What I'm trying to say is that when I started to read that book, before even interacting with any spirits, I was opening myself up to the current of energy. I could feel a shift in my consciousness even as soon as I started reading about it. Okay, so we are interacting with forces that are incredibly powerful, incredibly potent, and when you pass a certain threshold on your initiatory process, whether you're going through conscious initiation or just by learning about these spirits or through invocation, you are going to pass the threshold of that outer layer. Okay, and this is where most people don't venture past. Okay, that outer layer is getting caught in the superficial nonsense of black magic in general. Okay, needing to have excessive amounts of wealth, needing to attract partners, needing to manipulate reality, all of that sort of stuff. Okay, all of these things, yes, they do come in time, but once you are approaching it from a healthy perspective of actually trying to get to know yourself better and actually evolving and ultimately healing, because that is what these forces are here for. As much as they are more than willing to help you sometimes with superficial stuff, what I've found is that it's quite common at the beginning of someone's journey, if you approach, say, a spirit, a daemon for money or something like that, they will often give you that, yeah, or they'll show you that this is tangible, but then beyond that, they're like, okay, you've had your fun. Now it's time to actually start doing things properly. Okay, and all of these spirits have your evolutionary best interest. Okay, all daemonic spirits, when you interact with them, are going to have your evolutionary best interest in their own unique way. What these spirits actually are multi-dimensional levels of consciousness, okay? Multi-dimensional beings that dwell outside of the multiverse itself, okay? So they don't meet any rules or boundaries, yet they do operate in hierarchies according to their power and according to their abilities, okay, and what they sort of govern and rule over, okay. Each daemonic spirit, if you look, say, in the complete book of demonology, is going to have like certain descriptions next to it as to what this particular spirit can help with. But it's important to understand that every spirit is going to have more abilities that but basically greatly surpass what is put on a piece of paper in a simple description. Okay, so what these spirits actually are multi-dimensional beings that are dwelling within the primordial chaos. Most of them are older than the multiverse itself. Okay, some used to be human beings. Okay, but most of them, particularly when we're talking about the arch-daemonic forces that rule over the Qliphoth, such as Lilith, such as Namar, such as Samael, such as Belphegor, Asmodeus, Lucifuge Rothakal, Satan, all of these types of spirits are basically older than everything that you can see around you. Okay, they're older than you know. Okay, older than anything around you that you can see and tangibly experience, which means that their wisdom and the level of wisdom that you can tap into according to your resonance and your readiness is so incredibly vast. But it's important to understand that these are negatively polarized spirits, which basically means that they are going to vampirize the false self. What you are giving them in return is your illusion, and it does benefit your evolution if you are willing to deal with what comes next. Okay. And what I mean by that is that, okay, you go into it with unconscious attachments to the illusions, unconscious attachments to coping mechanisms, okay? Things that have been built, constructs that have been built specifically to hold you within an illusion of you thinking that you know who you are. You go to daemonic spirits, particularly when you interact with them from a Qliphothic perspective, from an occult initiation perspective, you are making a commitment to breaking the false self, feeding it to the daemons. Okay, and most people don't realize this when they start interacting with these spirits. Okay, and this is why it's, if you approach them from a superficial point of view, it's easy to mess it up, basically, because you're going to them with an illusionary intention, and then they are vampirizing that illusion. They're taking that illusion away, shattering it, but then you're still going towards them, wanting them to kind of, enforce something that you already think that you know. Okay, and that's not how they work. Okay, they're not going to satisfy your ego. What they're going to do is that they are going to vampirize according to what they rule over within your collective unconscious. Okay, as much as these are external beings, multidimensional forces that are older than the multiverse itself, it's important to understand that each one is going to be a mirror, is going to represent a potent shadow archetype, if we refer to them in Jungian terms, a potent multi-dimensional shadow archetype that represents a gateway to a hidden portion of yourself. Okay, so an example that I will use, okay, somebody approaches a daemon for money, okay, what they are not going to do, okay, is give you money. Okay, very unlikely. What they will do is that they will vampirize the expectations that you have of them. They will vampirize the illusion, vampirize the lack, vampirize the poverty mindset, and will trigger a type of dissolution if you interact with that current of energy regularly enough to be able to experience the tangible changes. Okay, so Mammon is a prime example. Okay, Mammon is one of my favorite spirits. Okay, one of my favorite daemonic spirits. It's helped with a lot of initiations through the Qliphothic tree, was an absolute savior in a lot of ways when sort of in the midst of the Daathic initiation in the Qliphothic abyss, because he shatters illusions, yeah, which means that he can help you to break through resistance that is around understanding your own sense of self-value. So how most people view Mammon or Clawneck or other money demons is that they view them as, oh, they rule over wealth in the collective unconscious. So if I interact with them, they're going to help me to develop the right resonance to be able to pull wealth in. Yes and no. What they're going to do is that they're going to start to take you on a much bigger process of self-development that involves dissolving your toxic need to have financial abundance in general, because you may be operating from a place that is actually trying to dissolve your true soul's essence. It's the same with Lilith. You interact with Lilith, you are dissolving the excess energy, the illusions that have been trapping everything that is dark and repressed and extremely personal about your feminine energy. Whether you're a guy or a gal, you are going to be interacting with Lilith in a way that basically is feeding her the illusion. Okay, she is feeding off of the illusion, dissolving the illusion that is keeping your dark, suppressed feminine energy, desires, impulses, perversions repressed in your nervous system, giving them permission to then come through to the surface. So they work in the opposite way to how a lot of people actually think that they work. Okay, they are inverted, which means that they are going to take you on an inverted path of self-development, which simply means that they are not going to teach you how to emanate. They are going to take the illusion away so that you can learn who you are beyond that. Okay, and this is the purpose of healing with daemons. Okay, healing with daemonic spirits is simply interacting with these shadow archetypes so that they can reveal to you more about yourself, more about your true self that is beyond the illusion. People ask, what am I giving them in return? Your illusions. Yeah. Doesn't matter how much incense you offer a daemon. You can offer them as much blood as you want. You can offer them as much fruit as you want. Yeah. You can offer them all of these material things if you want to. They don't really care about that in my experience. What they care about is devouring your illusion, because that's how they sustain themselves. Yeah, they sustain themselves by devouring your illusionary state of consciousness. That is how the negative polarity works. This is how they feed. This is how they interact with the cosmos. Okay, they feed on the excess energy that's around it. Okay, they do not want to cause anyone harm, but they are going to create experiences, particularly from an initiatory point of view, that are there to kind of break down your illusions, break down the layers of who you thought you were, expose the illusionary masks. And where do those masks go? They get dissolved, they get eaten, yeah? Eaten by these dark matter spirits. Okay, so the purpose of Qliphothic healing or daemonic healing is to allow yourself to go on a process of retrieving your power and godhood, but you cannot do that when you are still holding on to the illusions that you're not even aware that you're holding on to. This is the thing. When you're interacting with these spirits, you're not always consciously aware of what's falling away. This is the thing. Particularly when you go into the Qliphoth, you are going to have the wool pulled over your eyes. Okay, you're not going to be able to see the path directly ahead of you. You're not going to be able to know exactly where it's going to lead. Okay, and people need to prepare for this before they go into this initiation. Okay, because otherwise they're going to go into it wanting to feed their false self, feed the illusion because they want to be all powerful and edgy and want to call themselves black magicians. That is an illusionary intention, because that is going to be dissolved. Okay, you're going to realize that the whole purpose of interacting with the Qliphothic realms from an initiatory point of view is to return you to your godhood. Okay, and your godhood is not definable. It's to return you to the void state of consciousness. Okay, so I'm going to show the Qliphoth here. Okay, what this is referring to, many of you watching this probably already know, but what this is referring to is the dark feminine side of the Kabbalistic tree. When you're interacting with the Qliphothic realms, you are ascending from the Qliphothic Malkuth, Nehi Moth, also known as Lilith, moving up through the different spheres and up to Thalmael. Okay, and it's at the top of the tree where you really get that gnosis into who actually birthed creation. Yeah, this is the thing. It's not just surrender that is required to be successful within these initiatory processes. It is your ability to adapt to your truth. Okay, note that, bold that, yeah, underline that, remember that. If you are in the midst of your Qliphothic initiations, if you are proceeding with your Qliphothic initiations, even if you've been through all the spheres and are now doing the tunnels of Set, or you've done the tunnels of Set and are now going into the trans-Qliphothic initiation, you will know that it's not just about surrender. A lot of it is surrender, being willing to let go of things, let go of attachments, let go of illusions, of course. But success in the initiations is really defined by how you are willing to adapt to your truth. Because when the illusions are peeled away, the truth is revealed underneath. Okay, and that truth is not definable. Okay, when you pass through the Da'ath, it's likely that you will get gnosis into who you have always been. Okay, and you're not going to actually know consciously what that is. This is the thing, because who you have always been, that void state of consciousness, that infinite emptiness, that is pure potential, you realize that all humanity has been, all you have been born into, is a whole share of pre-constructed masks and constructs that are trying to distract you from your own emptiness, that are trying to distract you from pure meaninglessness, because that pure meaninglessness that is brought by the void initiation through the Da'ath in the Qliphothic process is the necessary process towards self-deification, because you realize that the true gods do not dwell within the light matter. This is the thing. The true gods dwell within the void, the primordial chaos. This is where realities are birthed from. So self-deification is the process of breaking through all of these Qliphothic shells. Doesn't matter how you do it. You could interact with a different type of initiatory system. You could go through, say, the gate-walking rituals of the Necronomicon. Yeah, you could initiate through Donald Tyson's 13 Gates of the Necronomicon. There are different pursuits of self-deification that you can undergo, but Qliphothic initiation in Western esotericism is kind of the go-to, because it will scratch your itches, evolutionary speaking, or evolutionarily, if that's even a word, speaking, from the point of view of your evolution is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, you will go through a hell of a lot of healing if you are willing to interact with it in the right way. As I've mentioned in previous videos, it is not the daemons that are dangerous. It is not the Qliphoth that is dangerous. What makes it dangerous is somebody's approach to it. Okay, so if you are approaching this from righteousness, from the perspective of thinking that you know everything already, thinking that you know yourself, and you're wanting to interact with these spirits because you want a label, then that is going to be devoured. Okay, and you need to be willing to let that go. As valid as it is to get you into the process, as I've said, it is a process of kind of being seduced into your own evolutionary process. As much as that is valid, we need to let that go. So when we are initiating through the Qliphothic realms, we are making a commitment to return to the primordial chaos, which is what many would call returning to the goddess. Okay, we separated ourselves into these physical, tangible avatars, knowing that we were going to be encased in this illusion, knowing that we were going to be encased in masks that are there specifically to separate us from our true potential. Okay, be born into a patriarchal gaslighting society that is constructed specifically to separate divinity from the masses. When we really look at that on a deeper level, we understand that this is what the Qliphoth is actually initiating you out of. Okay, it's initiating you out of that zombied state, yeah, of being encased within these illusionary shells and constructs in order to feel safer within the world around you. The whole journey of the Qliphoth is learning how to feel safe in your truth and authenticity. And that can become re-traumatizing if somebody does not realize that it's about that in general. Okay. Going back to what I said at the beginning of this video, very few people are actually wanting to face the darkness and face the reality of what the darkness actually is. And it's not just cool and edgy as much as it is. When you get beyond that, you are realizing that you are entering into realms that are going to dissolve the illusion and not just help you to heal and process on a deep fundamental level, not just to shed your own illusion, but actually to gain gnosis into what actually cultivated the multiverse in general, which was the adversarial forces. Yeah, the primordial forces that dwelled before everything, they are the real fathers. Yeah, the void is the real mother. Yeah, anything that you have been told is God is not God. Yeah, blasphemy, many people may say. Yeah, but look at the way that the world around us has been structured. Okay, structured in a way that has deliberately distracted us, steered us away from the very forces that are there to devour the illusion of reality, to devour the illusion of patriarchy, and to show us who we are beyond those illusions. Okay, it's important to understand that in a sense, our reality can be seen as a type of hell already because your hell structure exists within your unconscious, and the unconscious is the majority of your state of being, is the majority of your psyche, and everything that is in your nervous system is being projected out energetically into the world and then magnetizing your experiences. You could even interpret this as the world around us actually being hell already. Okay, so by actually facing hell, facing the darkness, facing the currents of the primordial chaos, facing these deep shadow archetypes, and being willing to take them as aspects of yourself and understand that there is really no such thing as summoning anything that is entirely outside of the self, because all is within, then we realize the illusion of what we've been born into. Okay, fed this illusion for such an extensive period of time, it's the era to break that illusion now. It's the era for returning to our true divinity from within the physical body. And that means making the decision between what is right and what is easy. Okay, what's easy is to ignore it. Okay, take the blue pill. Yeah, I always forget which pill Neo takes in the Matrix. I think he takes the red pill to go into the Matrix, yeah, or to go out of the Matrix. But the point is that you have a decision between the red or blue pill. One pill represents actually understanding the truth about yourself, understanding the truth about reality. The other pill represents actually just closing off to that entirely and just getting on as normal. Both have evolutionary potential behind them, but the easy decision is just to continue as you are, because the state of being that you are in and the state of being that you have cultivated is safer. But we've got to look beyond that. Where are you repressing your own vulnerability? Where are you repressing your own power? What parts of you are still locked away, frozen in the trauma, and still unconsciously responding to the same trauma that took place? It all comes down to trauma. And many people don't understand this when they are interacting with these types of forces. Okay. Break through the daemonic hierarchies, as cool as they are. Yeah. And understand that these are basically portions of yourself. If we approach it from a Jungian standpoint, these are archetypal energies that are there to initiate you, take you through trials that are there specifically to help you to get to know yourself better and help you to develop certain qualities that are going to reconstruct your reality in a way that is actually conducive to your own divinity, so that you can allow your inner child to come through and be expressed freely within the world around you and actually start meeting the needs of your inner child. That is what all of this is for. So you're interacting with daemonic forces. What is going to happen, even if you are just invoking them, what's going to happen is that the given spirit that you are invoking is going to take you on a process of dissolving. Okay. And which spirit, the type of dissolving is going to depend on multiple factors. The type of spirit, what regions it may be resonant with within your own unconscious, and the level of healing and evolution that your soul is ready to go through at this time. They are extremely respectful of your own soul's evolution. Yeah, they're not going to push you into something prematurely. Okay. But when you start interacting with them, they are going to challenge you. They're going to take you into those portions of yourself. They're going to start to peel away the illusions that is around that. Okay. And what spirit you're interacting with is highly going to depend and define what type of dissolving process you are going to go on. Okay. So, for example, my first spirit was Beelzebub, first spirit I ever interacted with, my patron spirit. Interacted with him, what started happening was dissolving the illusion around leadership in general. Okay, dissolving illusions around what you could refer to as totalitarian gnosis. Yeah, that's what his Qliphothic sphere, the second top sphere, Gagiel, is focused towards, dissolving the shadow of Hokmah, the shadow of wisdom, the shadow that represents when wisdom gets twisted into manipulation. Okay, you interact with Beelzebub, he takes you through a process of befriending decay, befriending your true masculine energy, okay, and ultimately devouring the illusion, the toxic masculine that the reality has been built off of. Beelzebub, in that example, is an extremely important spirit within the collective to interact with because he represents the twisted masculine. Okay, totalitarian gnosis, okay, cult-like movements, anything that is operating from that twisted, castrated masculine. Okay, I call it castrated masculine because Lilith was cast out of the garden. Samael was left to his own devices. The masculine without the feminine is incomplete, so he's castrated. And then the demiurge builds this shell of a human out of clay. Okay, so when we say the castrated masculine, we are referring to the toxic masculine. Beelzebub rules over the twisted divine masculine. He is the daemonic divine masculine, so what does he devour when you interact with him? He devours the illusion around your masculinity. Okay, devours the illusions around what may cause you to operate from a place of a power-hungry nature. And this can happen in a way that is extremely personal to you, extremely unconscious. Okay, you could have parts of you that have been made to feel inadequate and powerless, so then may go out and try and seek unconscious power over other people by disempowering them. This is what creates the totalitarian consciousness. This is what creates the cult-like mindset. So just that as an example, interacting with Beelzebub is going to dissolve the illusion around the divine masculine. Okay, take it to the opposite sphere, Lucifugedrophocale, Satariel, the sphere of Saturn, the divine womb, the divine feminine. Okay, you're interacting with Lucifugedrophocale, nothing is going to be straightforward. Okay, you're interacting with one of the darkest realms when you are interacting with Lucifugedrophocale. He is a trickster, the Lord of Pacts. He is going to initiate you by taking away any tangible path ahead of you. That's the initiation of the inverted Binah. Binah, the sphere of understanding within the Sephiroth. Satariel, Lucifugedrophocale, is going to invert that. Okay, you're going to encounter the shadows of understanding. You're going to encounter the shadows of knowing and how knowing and understanding, true understanding, comes from not knowing. True understanding comes from your ability to face the unknown, to face a path that you cannot see ahead of you. So Lucifugedrophocale is going to dissolve the illusion of understanding. Yeah. Go on to Thalmael, you're interacting with Satan and Moloch, the twin gods. Thalmael is split into two realms. Okay, Satan and Moloch. AC/DC. Alternate current, direct current. The two opposing forces that make up the throne of Lucifer. Okay, the throne of the light bringer. You're interacting with Thalmiel, you're dissolving the illusions of what is brought by Kether. Kether is oneness, the top sphere. Okay, the top sphere within the tree of life is Kether, represents oneness, the crown. So you are facing and dissolving the illusions around separation in general. And you're gaining gnosis into how the cosmos was shaped originally, free from the illusions of patriarchy. So the entire Qliphothic tree works like that. Okay, and even just interacting with daemons through invocation is going to trigger that type of process. Okay, what we're doing when we're interacting with the Qliphothic realms, the Qliphothic spheres is what I'm referring to here, is that you are being taken on a process of really merging with that realm, and then are making a commitment to actually opening that portion of the nervous system, that portion of your unconscious mind, and integrating what has been trapped within that illusionary shell. Okay, so when you're performing the rites of initiation into the Qliphothic spheres, you are basically taking a hammer to your nervous system, breaking open the shell, breaking the illusionary persona, and then are needing to deal with, process, and integrate the excess energy that is twisting that divine principle. Okay, to really understand the Qliphoth, you just have to look at the qualities of the Sephiroth. Okay, everything that's represented in the Sephiroth is going to be twisted and shadowed, yeah, and made toxic within the Qliphoth. But that means that once you go through the Qliphoth, you are going to be able to taste more of the Sephiroth because you have dealt with and integrated these shadows and the parts of you that are behind that. And that will then give you more access to the divine principle that is represented by the Sephiroth. Okay, so the angels are going to teach you through the Sephirothic initiations how to emanate, but without facing the shadows that are dwelled within the Qliphoth, that dwell within the Qliphoth, and integrating those different aspects, then you're not going to be able to taste the full power of the Sephiroth and actually be able to integrate that divine principle into your day-to-day life at its full potential. Okay, so the archdemonic forces that rule over the Qliphoth existed before everything. Okay, we are referring to forces here that existed before everything. They are different to some of the other daemonic hierarchies that are represented by, say, the Goetia. Okay, the Goetia are separate. Most of the Goetia, the 72 demons of the Ars Goetia, are representing lower spirits compared to the Qliphothic divinities, but there are crossovers. Okay, there are spirits within the 72 Goetia that also dwell within the Qliphothic tree itself, okay, and rule over the spheres. For example, Baal, okay, King Baal, okay, Astaroth, that rules over Ga'ag Shibla. Okay, so that Asmodeus is another one. Almost forgot Asmodeus. Golachub rules over Golachub, the sphere of Mars, the inverted sphere of Gebura. He rules over that given sphere. So Asmodeus, also known as Asmodee, rules over that given sphere. He's also in the Ars Goetia. Belial, who doesn't rule over a particular sphere per se, but you will likely encounter him when you go through the Darth. Okay, the Da'ath, the Qliphothic Abyss. Belial was also a very powerful guide through my Qliphothic Abyssal process. Okay, so, and he is also part of the Ars Goetia as well. In fact, he rules the Ars Goetia. So, we are interacting with extremely high spirits, but there are crossovers between these particular spirits and some of the other hierarchies, the Goetia being one of them. But typically, most of the Goetia is like, say, presidents, princes, dukes, those types of sort of titles that represent the particular vibrational density that spirit is operating within, and the archdemonic forces are far bigger, far more expansive, and have greater, what you could call greater dominion within the primordial chaos in general. So all the daemonic hierarchies are referring to are basically different vibrational bands, yeah, different currents of energy. So, for example, you have this spirit in the Goetia, for example, President Volak, who is then said to rule over X amount of legions of spirits. Okay, and each spirit within the Ars Goetia is said to rule over a whole share of different legions of spirits. Okay, so they represent they're already quite high up in the hierarchy, and then who are underneath them are going to be different legions of lesser spirits that are beyond them, or should I say less than them, vibrationally speaking. Okay, so as much as these spirits are rebellious in nature, there are still sort of hierarchies that are distributed according to the vibrational bands, according to vibrational frequency, that separates these different spirits and sort of places them in different levels in the hierarchy, so to speak. Okay, so initiation via the Qliphothic realms, you initiate into a Qliphothic sphere. What that is then going to create within you, you're going to bring the spirit and the energy of the Qliphothic sphere into your nervous system. It will feel incredibly tangible after you have performed the initiation. What is then going to happen is that you are going to emanate that energy, and the spirit that rules over that given sphere is going to orchestrate certain trials that will happen both within you, emotionally speaking, and likely through your external world as well. It's very interesting how the Qliphothic divinities actually come at you through the external world in the form of people. Okay, one of the most notable here was what I was processing a lot in my Qliphothic initiations, particularly within Baal's sphere, Arab Zarak, just the sort of inverted Netzach, was things relating to my hypochondria, so my repressed hypochondria and, deeper feelings of my inner child feeling paranoid about the body, and all things relating to that inverted Venusian energy. What I encountered in that sphere was I actually had a biopsy in my mouth, and the doctor was extremely cold. Yeah, and I could feel like a current of energy moving through this particular person. And what it did to do the biopsy, it wasn't a normal like little knife thing. It was like a big long spear looking thing. I was like, that's extremely long. So then he does the biopsy, incredibly painful. And then when I get home, I realize that the biopsy has been done in the wrong place. Yeah. Despite me pointing to where the biopsy needed to be taken. And what that basically did was that fleshed out the illusion of the hypochondria and helped to integrate the part by saying, look, you've just had a biopsy in the wrong place. And that shows how a lot of that worry was illusionary on the literal level, but at the same time, it is valid and there to be processed and integrated. So that is like a prime example of how, these spirits can actually manifest. Okay. They do often possess temporarily often through chaos and through something like trauma that somebody around you may be processing. They do possess the people around you and often do speak through the people around you. So my partner, when going through the Qliphothic realms, definitely had spirits that were speaking through her to me in ways that would bring things up in order to be processed and integrated. So when you're initiating into that Qliphothic realm, the daemon that rules over that given sphere is going to basically orchestrate a set of initiatory trials that are there specifically to devour the illusion and help you basically master and integrate that shadow part of you. Okay, that's how the Qliphothic initiations work. Okay, that's why they often manifest chaos within one's reality, because they bring things into your reality as archetypes. Okay, archetypes to look at, to process and integrate, and basically learn how to not repress it and not through repression give it a power over you. An example would be in Asmodeus' sphere, Golachab. Extremely tangible sphere is Golachab. Okay, you're dealing with the 9 circles of hell here, dealing with how your passion has been trapped within these symbolic torture chambers within the collective unconscious. Asmodeus represents all of these hidden desires, repressed rage, repressed anger, and is going to give you the opportunity to transmute it. Okay, and if you refuse that opportunity, then he is going to bring you situations that are going to be more chaotic in nature. So often Gola Chub may manifest trials of actual physical conflict, whether it's arguments with somebody around you, arguments with partner. That's definitely how it manifested a lot for me. But it could manifest in the form of like maybe even like a potential fight, like through, situations that have the potential to turn violent, things that are really going to play on your repressed anger and rage so that you can then learn restraint and learn how to ultimately forge the path towards passion to then integrate the anger, because the anger and the rage is developed within the nervous system and is then the most repressed feeling in the nervous system other than pain. It's created through a person's needs not being met one way or another. Okay, so the real way to alchemize anger and rage is to start to forge your path towards things that you are passionate about. Okay, actually cultivate passion within your life and within your own body and nervous system. So Asmodeus will give you opportunities within Gola Chub to be able to sort of process the anger, let it out, let it be felt and integrated, and in doing so, actually learning how to forge the path. Okay, in doing so, actually learning how to forge the path towards a different reality. Okay, to actually start meeting your needs, and that is how the integration happens within that particular realm. Ga'ag Shiblar, the sphere that is opposite Golachar, ruled by Astaroth, you're dealing with inverted abundance here. Chesed is the ever-flowing river of compassion, love, and abundance, the Jupiterian sphere. When you're facing Ga'ag Shiblar, you are facing the inversion of abundance. So that means that you are facing the illusion of desire. Okay, that's why Ga'ag Shiblar is often described as the pit of desire or the abyss of desire, because you're facing the illusion of desire. Okay, you're facing what has been holding your desire for abundance, for enjoyment in your life out of something that isn't actually you. Ga'ag Shiblar shows you the illusions that is around what is actually behind your decisions. Okay, shows you that a lot of why you may not be attaining the things that you want within your life is because your intention going into it is completely illusionary. So you have to allow the illusion and the toxicity surrounding your abundance to dissolve. For some people, this may manifest in the form of repressed addictions coming back to the surface, coping mechanisms that are there to fill a void that was created through an unmet need. So when that starts to happen, when those impulses start to come back to the surface, you have a choice. Yeah. Somebody who is not trauma informed, and this is why the Qliphoth can become dangerous for people who are going into it with the wrong mindset and the wrong approach. What may happen in Ga'ag Shiblar is that they won't integrate that, and then they'll just fall backwards back into the addiction and completely relapse. Yeah. So what is happening is that those trials within Ga'ag Shiblar are being manifested by Astaroth to help you to understand the toxicity that has been behind your desire so that you can embrace what is actually underneath that and start actually forging a path towards true desire. Okay. Belphegor, okay, his sphere is Thagirion. Okay, Belphegor is a really cool spirit. Again, another spirit of abundance, often seen as a money daemon. But again, because we're dealing with a Qliphothic divinity that is negatively polarized in nature, we are going to be facing a current of energy that is there to dissolve the illusion. Okay, so we are facing the sphere of the Black Sun. When you initiate into the sphere of the Black Sun, you will have just gone through likely an extremely loud initiation in Arab Zarak. Yeah, Arab Zarak extremely dissolving to the different fruits of your ego, dissolving to your coping mechanisms. It's extremely loud and chaotic sphere. Then you enter Thagirion, and Thagirion is like just quiet. Okay, oh my God. It's quiet here. Too quiet. Yeah, and this quietness, people often say that when you enter Thagirion, your spirit guides actually leave you to be alone within this realm. and you face the dissolving energy of the black sun. What's the black sun? The inversion of Tifereth, the inversion of beauty. So you are facing the illusions around beauty itself. Okay. Often in Belphegor's sphere, Belphegor will initiate you through means of actually seeing what is pretend within the world around you. I started really thinking in the sphere of Thagirion, everything is just pretend. Yeah, I'm just pretending. Yeah, everything is just like kind of seeing like how the reality around you is something of a play that you're just kind of playing out for the sake of it. Yeah, how it will manifest for you will be ultimately be different, but Belphegor is there to dissolve the illusion around beauty in general. Again, often seen as a money spirit, Belphegor will dissolve the illusions around your sense of self. Okay, will expose how you've been pretending. Yeah, again, the danger that you can potentially face when working with Belphegor through invocation, or especially through Qliphothic initiation, is again being consumed in the desires. Yeah, so a lot of trials that come through the Black Sun are illusions of grandeur. Yeah, illusions of grandeur get exposed, thinking that you have actually come further than you have, and then realizing how those illusions of grandeur have actually been blocking your own evolution. So you can see once again that Belphegor, as much as he is seen as a money spirit, he is then going to take you through the process of dissolving the superficial, dissolving the illusion around that so that you can create something more. Thagirion is the black sun, which will dissolve the illusion and then to basically clear space for something new and evolved to be constructed. Okay, you can see it as the opposite of the sun. The sun emanates, illuminates everything. Yeah, the black sun is vampiric, pulls everything away. Yeah, pulls the veils from underneath you. I feel Thagirion does have a similar, nowhere near as intense, but a similar energy to the Da'ath. At the end of the day, it is just straight up to the Da'ath, the straight up pathway to lead up into the Da'ath is straight up from Thalmiel, not Thalmiel, straight up from Thagirion. So it does have a similar dissolving energy to the black hole that is represented by the Da'ath, just not quite as intense, and is really going to, again, expose the illusions around beauty in general. So the opposite of the sun. So you see where we're going here. Yeah, it's like you're interacting with these spirits, with these Qliphothic currents of energy, and they're going to vampirize the illusion. Yeah, and that is what Qliphothic healing is focused towards. Okay, you're dissolving the illusions and then you're integrating the different parts of you. And you can see easily how, if you approach this from the right perspective, that it will eventually lead to material level success as well. Yeah, whereas if you're going into it for material level success, for those superficial things, then you're going into it from the place of separation, going into it from the place of lack, and then you'll need to let go of that completely. Particularly when you get to the abyss, you'll need to let go of every part of you that you thought was actually you, so that you can then become fertile soil to really allow whatever needs to grow within you for your evolutionary best interest and benefit. So the whole purpose of interacting with daemonic spirits in this way is to sensitize your nervous system and integrate these darker impulses. And this is why the Qliphoth is often seen as dangerous, even though it is not dangerous in its own right. It's there to help you, and it will help you if you let it. It's seen as dangerous because if someone goes into it when they're not trauma informed, then they could just fall backwards into these desires and then basically be operating from within that sphere predominantly. Yeah. So, according to given trauma cycles, you could say that people can easily get stuck in a particular sphere. You could see somebody who is kind of looping in, their own desire, somebody who has had their innocence completely molested, taken away through their early years experiences, causing their inner child to be stuck, exiled within the torture chambers. Where does that dwell within the tree? That is in the sphere of Golachub, okay, Asmodeus' sphere. So you could say that a paedophile could be looping in a trauma cycle that is induced by the vicious succubi that dwell within the sphere of Golachub. Okay, so as you're going through the Qliphothic process, you will also find that spirits will manifest in the form of impulses. So in the form of, say, a succubi, that would take on the form of a sexual desire or an impulse that will come through. Okay, so you face Gamaliel or Nehemoth, and you face the succubi that dwell within those realms, you may actually encounter actual spirits that may take form of succubi and vampires and things like that. Or you are just going to get intense sexual urges that you are there to process, integrate, and bring balance to. Okay, so that's how these Qliphothic realms work. You are opening yourself up to the repressed thought forms that have been created out of fear and out of trauma, and you are basically harmonizing those parts. Okay, you are integrating those different aspects of you. It's a hell of a journey. Okay, and you can see how, if you're approaching it from that healthy healing perspective, that interacting with these forces are going to be extremely beneficial for you. And acknowledge that because you are mastering these different impulses as you go through these Qliphothic realms, you are mastering these different emotions, learning how to actually use them, not suppress them just to dwell and exist within the external world and survive within the external world, but actually learning how to use these feelings and emotions to actually forge your path, then you can really see how that's what the purpose of the Qliphothic process is, and that is what the daemons are here to show you. They're here to help you master the given qualities that that given spirit rules over. Samael, that's a fun sphere. Yeah. Samael, where you face a Dramalek. A Dramalek will likely feed you his poisonous beverage. Yeah. Often taking on the form of a literal spirit that holds a goblet in front of you with poison in it. You ingest that poison, you go through the process of facing your own ego, the structure of your own ego. Again, you're not dissolving your ego entirely, you're dissolving the illusions that are around it. So in Samael, you are facing your ego head on, the structure of your ego head on, not to get rid of your ego, but you are facing your ego head on to get it on side. The whole purpose of this type of initiatory process and the whole purpose of dark matter alchemy or dark celestial ascent, however you want to refer to it, self-deification, is to mature your ego into the image of your soul. Okay, mature the ego into the image of your soul so that it is working with you and not against you. It's the same with the shadow. By default, our ego is holding on to false order, false light, i.e., the majority of the spiritual community. 5D. I'm a starseed. All of that total nonsense. It's holding on to false light and then ignoring the shadow. And meanwhile, the shadow is like, excuse me, sending experiences to you to get you to own things about yourself. The ego is then ignoring them, and that's how most people live their lives. So the process of self-deification is a process of sensitizing your own system, clearing the veil between the conscious and unconscious mind so that you can work in harmony with your shadow self and not try and separate yourself from it. This is going to have huge impact on the collective itself. Okay, a huge impact on the collective purely because you are facing the microcosmic shadow self, the microcosmic hell structure, integrating the trauma that is dwelling within that hell structure, and ultimately learning how to use these in a way that helps you. Okay, so even if you're just doing invocation, it's still going to trigger a deep initiatory process. Even if you're just doing an invocation of a spirit, it's still going to trigger a deep initiatory process. And you're not going to be able to go back to who you were before you started working with that spirit. So this is a solid path of self-evolution that works a hell of a lot quicker and a hell of a lot deeper than a lot of other stuff. But you have to make that full commitment to offering your false self in return. Okay, and bear in mind, your false self is not you. That's why it's called the false self. Yeah, you are offering the false self. you're going through this deep initiation, you're not going to be able to hold on to it. Okay, so emotions within the dark matter realms are powerful things. Okay, that's what fuel the impulses that you encounter throughout your Qliphothic process. Where it becomes dangerous is when you don't want to look at those emotions and integrate them, so then they spiral out of control, which is what happens in the collective all the time. This is why the principles of that are represented by each of the spheres play out all the time within the collective. Yeah, this is why the principles of the Qliphoth and what each sphere represents plays out in the collective, because it just spirals out of control when it's not looked at. Okay, and this is how people become, say, serial killers, rapists. It's how the totalitarian systems can develop. It's how cults develop. Okay, because these deeper layers of the self are not looked at or owned and refused, so then they spiral out of control and then project from the unconscious into the world around you, and then cultivate those experiences. Okay, and they manifest those temptations, those desires. And if we're not aware of them, then those literal parts that we have exiled and refused are going to then work through us and carry out that same re-traumatizing behavior. So that is the danger by interacting with dark matter energies, okay, causing your emotions to then spiral completely out of control, and then you're just looping in that trauma cycle constantly. Okay, so somebody who doesn't want to integrate the lessons of Lilith in Gamaliel, for example, the sphere of Gamaliel, the second sphere of initiation, you're going to be facing everything that is repressed, everything that is ugly and nasty about your own feminine energy, facing the repressed impulses, desires, all of those things. Somebody who is looping within that space and is not actually sitting there and integrating that real balance that is required between restraint and letting go, then they are going to be cycling within those sexual desires. Yeah, cycling within that particular Qliphothic sphere, and they're going to re-traumatize themselves in the process, because that emotion and that impulse is then spiraling out of control. Whereas what you need to do is observe and feel into those body sensations to really understand how to process that effectively. And all you have to do is observe it. Lilith will initiate you in ways that involve her devouring the illusions that is repressing your desires, and will teach you in Gamaliel how to restrain your sexual energy. If you have a problem with sexual release, or you're addicted to sex or addicted to porn or something like that, then Lilith will probably initiate you through restraint. Okay. Whereas if you're the opposite, yeah, then Lilith will probably initiate you through showing you how to let go, and then bringing the balance between them. Okay. Learning how to balance desire with restraint. Okay. So you can see now how these different spirits work and function within your individual nervous system, and how interacting with them is inducing a big process of integration that is represented by that particular shadow archetype. So the real medicine to working with these spirits in this way is to take them as parts of you. Okay, take them as portions of yourself. Okay, not approaching them as an entirely separate energy, but actually merging with them. Okay, and that's what you're doing when you're invoking a spirit anyway. You're bringing the spirit into your body. Yeah, and you're creating a merging with it. And what that's doing is that is then evoking the repressed feelings that are trapped within the nervous system. So daemonic or Qliphothic healing is sacrificing your false self. Okay, sacrificing your false self that has been sacrificing your true self unconsciously without you realizing it. And you're going to go through so much transformation if you are willing to embrace that process. You're going to go through so much transformation. The people around you are going to change. Your jobs are probably going to change. You're going to really clear the way to your truth and authenticity, as well as gaining some completely kick-ass gnosis about how creation actually came to be, and how the majority of the information that has been spread through the collective is a complete lie in order to gain control over the masses. Yeah, so right here is a very solid path to initiation, to getting to know oneself on an extremely deep level, if you are willing to face these emotions and integrate them. Yeah, because at the end of the day, emotions are powerful. And when they start to spiral out of control, that is when they become dangerous. Okay, so when you are able to really sit with these different parts of yourself, integrate them, then you will gain power from the Qliphothic process. This is how the dark matter gives you power, by bringing your repressed trauma to the surface, and then you are becoming one with the beast. Yeah, you're becoming one with the monster inside of you. You're becoming one with your primal self. You're becoming one with the dragon that exists within you. You're waking up the beast and you are merging with it. You're not refusing it anymore. Yeah, we all have a dark side. We all have a primal state of consciousness that is represented by the reptilian brain. We all have a primal state of consciousness within us that when we refuse it and try and pretend we don't have it, that is what causes the majority of the re-traumatizing events and desire to play out in uncontrollable ways and causes it to completely spiral out of control. Whereas when you are actually willing to merge with the demon, become the daemon, you are the daemon, you are everything that these spirits represent. You are gaining power over that aspect of you, and you are then going to learn how to channel that power to be able to cultivate your reality in a way that is actually for the best interest of both yourself and those around you. Whereas what happens with most people is that they enter into these realms, they work with these types of dark spirits, and then they get completely caught up in the surface level. They're just spiraling within all of these different energies. The impulses are coming through the need to curse people, through the need to get revenge, through all of these things. And you're going to get these impulses when you work with these spirits, particularly when going through the Qliphothic initiation. The amount of times I've thought, oh God, like, oh, I could so easily just summon this spirit and then just, yeah, like work with them to just basically just mess this person up. Yeah. I'm owning that. Yeah. And that is how owning those different parts of you, owning the parts of you that are incredibly vicious in nature, if they are left uncontrolled and left alone in the dark, that is when those impulses will come through. And that's what happens with people who go into these processes when they are not willing to deal with what's coming up. They just cycle in this, illusion of needing to curse people, cycle in illusion of using these energies to manipulate reality. Okay. And this is when the Qliphoth becomes extremely dangerous and actually feeds your separation. Yeah. It feeds your separation when you are actually falling into its traps. Okay. And the traps come only through temptation. Yeah. Come only through impulses coming to the surface, situations coming up, and you not being able to see the higher purpose in them, and then actually doing the exact thing that the spirit is trying to initiate you out of. Yeah. So in Asmodeus's sphere, prime example, you fall victim to your own desires and you don't want to look at them. And then next thing you know, you're going out and committing horrendous crimes. Yeah. Or like you're getting into fights or all of those kinds of things. Yeah. So that's the dangers really of working with these realms, and is what most people end up cycling within. Yeah. Most people who talk about their Qliphothic initiation process is that they're getting caught in these impulses, and there's no tangible proof that they have gained any power over these impulses at all and integrated these different parts, which is why they're just cycling in these illusions constantly. Yeah. The whole purpose is to go into it from the perspective of evolution, self-mastery, and getting to know yourself on a deeper level, shifting your reality into a greater technology to support the evolution of yourself and those around you. Okay, you're going into forces here that are separated from source, that have been cast out So the purpose is to understand your separation from source, understand the illusions of separation instead of falling into the illusions of separation. And this is how most black magicians fail completely. Yeah, this is how most, people who class themselves as left-hand path practitioners, this is where they fall into. Yeah, they fall into a complete narcissistic bubble that is then fed by the Qliphothic process, and then they operate from complete separation entirely, instead of integrating that separation and understanding the illusion of it. So I think that is everything that I needed to speak about in today's video. It's a huge healing path. Okay, if you need any support and you want to work with me through my memberships or through mentoring, then check out the links in the description of this video. If this video is helpful to you, hit like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.